1998, although still mired in bankruptcy, the United States government decided that it was time to purchase a new small arms weapon system to replace the aging and obsolete M16A2s that its troops were using. Some firing trials were held at the Marine Corps base at Parris Island, South Carolina. Among the officials present was USMC General Donald Lundy, Marine Corps Chief of Staff, who at 50 was one of the youngest officers ever to serve on a Joint Chiefs. In the end, the final trials came down to 3 weapons systems. One was FN's SAP, a cheap but clunky and unreliable rifle that had made it to the finals only because it permitted the US to stay compatible in ammunition and parts with other troops in the now obsolete NATO alliance, and because Fabrique International seemed to have gained powerful friends in the US government. The second was Colt's new AR-17X, a good gun that was destined to lose out in the end due to its high cost. The final entrant was an underdog that no one had ever expected to make the final trials, a compact, reliable, and moderately priced rifle designed by expatriate Italian weapons expert Antonio Lucchesi and manufactured by his small but successful New Hampshire-based firm Armatech Lucchesi International. To General Lundy, the choice was obvious. The Armatech Lucchesi system was the best combination of price, reliability, sturdiness, and accuracy. It wasn't a perfect rifle, but it was a damn good one. The best of the 3 in the trials. Unfortunately, the collapse of the US economy and near collapse of the government had not only tightened the national purse strings, but it had also permitted the fingers of industry influence to penetrate to unsuspected depths within the political infrastructure. The net result was that, despite Lundy's vociferous protests, and to his horror, the contract went to FN. Ironically, 5 years later, the European community switched to the brand new FN RAL, an excellent gun that was unfortunately largely incompatible with the SAP system. 1 year later, to the United States government's further embarrassment, American boys armed with unreliable SAP rifles were dying by the thousands in the jungles of tropical South and Central America. Donald Lundy was sorry to see the whole fiasco come to a head, but he observed from a distance. Shortly after the finalization of the contract, he resigned from the Marine Corps to accept the offer of a CEO position at Armatech Lucchesi, the company that had so impressed him. Together, Lundy and Lucchesi began laying the groundwork that would enable the small Armatech to become the world's largest weapons manufacturing conglomerate. As a former Pentagon chief, Lundy was extremely well connected into the military-industrial complex, and he had many extremely wealthy industrialist and venture capitalist contacts. Several of the old guard 20th century military contracting corporations had become bureaucratic, top-heavy, and slow-witted, and had suffered crippling blows during the crash. Those that were still selling products were moving lots of shoddy and overpriced merchandise on the strength of contractual inertia alone. The time was ripe in the hostile post-crash world for a new kind of military manufacturer, streamlined, efficient, producing superior modern products at competitive prices, able to deal its technology anywhere in the world, irrespective of political convention or outmoded national alliances. Lundy's pitch, supported by Lucchesi's obvious brilliance as a weapons design engineer, was successful, and an infusion of capital was followed by a period of shrewd acquisition and the securing of several key contracts around the world. Armatech was propelled into a period of tremendous expansion. With the company's new world prominence and high visibility came a new name. Armatech Lucchesi was retired, and Militech Arms International was born. Militech's growth was rapid, but it did not happen overnight. The first major success came in 2004, when, after the debacle of the Central American Wars, the US finally junked the SAP. New trials were conducted, and the weapon finally chosen was Militech's Ronin Light Assault Rifle. Shortly after that, Militech also won the military sidearm contract. The US's choice of those weapons caused them to sell in huge numbers to other nations and corporations around the world. At the same time, Militech was developing and testing new heavy weapons, including artillery, armored vehicles, and aircraft. Moderate prices and well-designed products enabled Militech to break precedent and win several key contracts away from established defense manufacturers that were still operating after the world and US crashes. More US sales led to more international sales, and by the mid-teen years, Militech was the largest defense contractor to the United States and several other countries and corporations as well. That made it possible for Militech to buy out several of its failing competitors and incorporate their designs and resources. Several companies Militech bought out did not want to come quietly, and a few of the takeovers were made 21st century style, with savage corporate wars. In addition, Militech has made enemies of many of the surviving international military manufacturing corporations. Competition has always been fierce among these companies in the warfare-ridden cyberpunk world, and new weapon systems are often proven to prospective buyers when the selling company uses them to destroy its competitors. Now, Militech continues to be a dominating force in military hardware manufacturing, under the leadership of the capable General Donald Lundy and the technically brilliant Antonio Lucchesi, who not only still designs, but supervises the recruitment and progress of a new generation of talented young designers and engineers. Militech continues to flourish and grow. Among its thousands of products, Militech manufactures small arms, heavy weapons, special weapons and explosives, chemical and biological weapons, aircraft, boats and ship, military computers and avionics, field hardware, military accessories, and military cybernetics. A variety of civilian products are also in their catalogue, including security systems, personal lethal and non-lethal weapons, and body armor. In addition, Militech has expanded into the lucrative world of mercenary contracting, and the corporation maintains a large force of crack, well-equipped soldiers for defense and contracting purposes. A policy of ruthless competition and no-quarters corporate warfare has helped keep Militech at the forefront of its industry. Huge, diverse, and savage, it is truly a corporation for the 21st century. Unfortunately, Lundy, like so many before him, has been subtly warped by the tremendous power he has acquired. He originally joined Armatech Lucchesi with the highest of ideals. He wanted to produce superior military products at reasonable prices so that US and other troops wouldn't be left facing the consequences of inferior weapons workmanship. The expansion of Armatech into Militech was a logical step toward making that philosophy apply at all levels of weapon crafting and not just to small arms. While Militech continues to maintain high quality standards and reasonable prices, there are no longer any idealistic explanations for it. It is strictly business, another way for Militech to expand its market share and consolidate power. Lundy espouses noble corporate goals for public relations reasons, but beneath it all, his desires to see Militech become the most potent force on the planet. Still, there are some problems for Lundy. While no one within the corporation can deny Lundy's leadership or executive abilities, not everyone on the board of directors likes him. This worries Lundy. Although he holds a large chunk of Militech stock and sits on the board of directors, he is not chairman. Neither is the chairman a pawn of his. This means that he can lose his position as CEO should the board of directors find fault with him. Lundy has been waging a subtle financial war, trying to consolidate as much of the voting power as possible in his hands and those board members loyal to him. This has caused tension within the board of directors and has led to several assassinations and resignations. At this point, as the power struggle between Lundy and those board members who would replace him with their candidate continues, there is a great deal of turmoil. Lundy is not yet in imminent danger of being forced out, but that time could come if he's not careful. None of this has done any good for Lundy's paranoia level, and he lives and travels under constant guard to prevent assassination. Fortunately for the corporation, the internal struggle has only mildly affected Militech policy and has not damaged it politically or financially by unspoken agreement. All internal strife is kept as secret as possible from the outside world, so as not to betray any weakness within the corporation. Antonio Lucchesi left the Beretta company to emigrate to the United States in 1992. For a few years he lent his expertise to Colt firearms. Then in 1996 he struck out on his own to found Armatech Lucchesi. Within 2 years the young company had a small but successful line of products on the market. Lucchesi knew that to turn enough profit for expansion he would have to win some large contracts with the government or with police departments. In 1998 Armatech entered the trials for the new US infantry assault weapon. Unfortunately, due to pork barrel politics, the poorly designed FN system won the contract. On the other hand, several police departments did buy the Armatech gun. Lucchesi knew that Armatech was going to have to bring a Washington insider into the company if he was ever going to win a big military contract. In 2000, Lucchesi forfeited his position as CEO and chairman of Armatech and wooed Donald Lundy into replacing him. It was a good move on Lucchesi's part, and one of the last active decisions he would ever make on the large-scale company policy. 20 years later, Armatech, under its new name, had grown into a monster beyond Lucchesi's conception. Lucchesi holds a nominally high-powered executive vice president spot within Militech, but he has little real power. This does not trouble him, since he is truly happy only when working in his design studio or the manufacturing shops. The real measure of Lucchesi's influence in Militech is that he is the director of the Small Arms Development Division and is responsible for overseeing systems development and production and for recruiting new engineering and design talent. In this environment, Lucchesi is content and happy, with freedom and resources beyond any he ever thought he would have. He continues to produce innovative, award-winning weapons for his company. Despite the medical advantages of the era, Lucchesi has suffered problems with age. His eyes have long since failed and have been replaced with cyberware. His arthritic hands have also given way to new artificial ones. Lucchesi is a product of the previous age and doesn't like having all this metal and plastic in his body, but he knows that it's the only way to continue his work, since his abilities seem to have increased with age, and no one in the board of directors is in any hurry to push him out. Because of his talent and knowledge of Militech proprietary data, Lucchesi represents a high extraction risk. As a protective measure, he lives and works with his staff at the headquarters tower. He doesn't enjoy it, and would rather work at the old Armatech shops in New Hampshire, where many of the Militech small arms design facilities are now located. Dr. Engelson is a Vice President Director of the Militech Special Projects Department, and one of the most important non-board members in the Militech hierarchy. Dr. Engelson's specialities are biomechanics, biochemistry, and reconstructive surgery. Besides being general director of these special projects, he's also running the genetic, cybernetic, and chemical modification experiments being performed by the department. He is known amongst the troops and lower executives as Dr. Death, and considered someone to avoid. It is rumored that to cross him is to end up as the subject in one of his experiments. He might end up dead, or worse. Anastasia Lucchesi granddaughter of Antonio Lucchesi, who secured her a space in the Militech Special Operations Training School. Rather than moving on into the business side of things, Anastasia took to the combat training, and much to her grandfather's consternation, decided to make a career out of special operations. Anastasia would become one of Militech's most dangerous agents. She is seductively beautiful, merciless, and adept at several forms of combat. She has run infiltration, extraction, espionage, and assassination missions. She is known by the codename Sphinx, although many troops call her the Bitch. During the Shadow War and Fourth Corporate War, she was placed under the command of freelancer Morgan Blackhand. Though not officially part of Morgan's team, Anastasia worked closely with him to absorb his techniques and tactics. She was also given another mission to eliminate Blackhand if he threatened Militech. In order to fulfill her assignment, she decided to try and seduce Morgan. Whether that worked or not remains unknown.